So you've probably seen the videos online, right? People wearing animal masks, running around on all fours. They're called Therians, and yeah, they usually end up as the punchline in a meme. But what if there's more going on than just cringe? Today, we're going to look past those viral clips and try to understand what therianthropy is actually all about.
Okay, let's just get the biggest question out of the way right now. Do therians actually literally believe they are animals? And the answer is no. It's way more complex than that. And honestly, understanding this one point is the key to unpacking this entire identity. Let's be real. For most of us, our first contact with this whole topic was probably through some meme or a cringe compilation. But you know how it is. Those clips are made for clicks, not for real understanding. So to get the real picture, we kind of have to put all the social media reactions on the shelf for a minute and look at what the community and researchers are actually saying. Okay, so first things first. What even is therianthropy? Let's get ourselves a solid definition.
The most important part is right there in the definition. It's an identity on a non-physical level. So this isn't about biology. It's not someone believing their body is physically a wolf. It's about a deep internal feeling or sense of self.
Now, you might have also heard the term otherkin floating around, and it's easy to get them confused. The difference is pretty simple, though. Therians identify with real earthly animals, wolves, cats, foxes. Otherkin, on the other hand, identify with mythical or fictional beings, like dragons or elves. For this explainer, we're really just focusing on therians.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because this kind of busts a big myth. A lot of people assume this identity has to be some kind of spiritual or religious thing, like a belief in reincarnation. But when you look at surveys from inside the community, only about a third of therians see it that way. For the big majority, 2/3 of them, it's understood as a psychological experience.
All right, now we're getting to what might be the single most important idea to wrap your head around here. For therians, this isn't a choice.
Again and again, therians describe their identity as something they experience, not something they've picked out. It's not a hobby, it's not a lifestyle they're trying on. It's this deep, involuntary part of who they are, something many have felt since they were kids, long before they ever had a word for it.
So, what does an involuntary experience like this actually feel like? Well, this quote from a research participant is pretty eye-opening. They talk about these sudden physical sensations of having non-human body parts. The community calls them phantom limbs or phantom shifts. It's this sensory experience that feels totally real, even when you logically know it's not physically there. And these experiences can show up in a few different ways. On top of those phantom limbs, a lot of people report dream shifts, where they vividly become their animal type in their sleep. Or they might even have these involuntary animal instincts and behaviors that just kind of pop up in their day-to-day lives. So as you can imagine, having an involuntary identity like this can create some really big internal conflicts. And that's especially true when it bumps up against something like religious faith. For Christian therians, this whole thing becomes a really unique and complex challenge. This quote from a Christian therian just gets right to the core of that tension. I mean, if your whole identity is supposed to be rooted in Christ, what on earth do you do with this other deeply felt identity that feels not human? Right? How do you make those two things work together? How can your foundation be your faith, but at the exact same time, you're having this involuntary, non-human experience that also feels absolutely fundamental to who you are? It's a huge question. Well, for some, the way they figure it out is by creating a sort of hierarchy of identity. They see their faith as their absolute core, the very center of who they are. Therianthropy, then, isn't that core. Instead, it's one of the many facets that surround it. An experience they have, kind of like having a talent for painting or a deep love for science.
And this distinction in language is so important. As this person puts it, they don't identify as a therian. That's not the main label that defines them. Instead, therianthropy is more like a descriptor, just one part of a much bigger person whose center remains their faith.
This struggle to explain such a personal, internal identity, it really points to a much bigger question. What do you do when your own life experience doesn't neatly fit into any of the stories that society already has? Believe it or not, there's actually a philosophical term for this. It's called hermeneutic injustice. It's basically the challenge of trying to make sense of your own life and to explain it to other people, when the shared words to describe it just don't exist yet. You're left trying to tell your story in what some researchers call a barren narrative environment.
And that leaves us with a thought that goes way beyond this specific topic. When you have a profound, real experience that the world doesn't have a name for, a story that hasn't been written yet, how do you even begin to find the words to tell it?